Let's talk about the top 5 things that you can do to get into an Ivy League university or any top 20 university for that matter. Some of these things might seem a little obvious at first, but I'm going to go into detail so that you understand why they're important. And some of these might not seem so obvious, but they are equally important to getting into any really good school. The first thing you need to get into an Ivy League school is academic scholarship. And this is by far the most important of all the 5 things you need. And what do I mean by academic scholarship? Well, of course you need to have a really high GPA. That's where it all starts. To get into any kind of top 20 school, you really want to be as close to a 4.0 as possible, but you don't have to be perfect. A lot of students worry about having a perfect GPA. It's not about perfection. It's just about being really high. And so I would say that for an unweighted GPA out of 4.0, that's probably about a 3.8 or 3.9 or a 4.0. And most of the students that you're going to be competing against for those spots all have those grades, right? That's just a given. That's the benchmark. So you need to be at that level. But the other thing is that it's not just important to have a high GPA. You have to have a high GPA taking the most rigorous course load that's available at your particular high school. And that's where weighted GPA comes in. So if your school has a lot of AP courses, for example, that are available, they're worth more than just a single point. So you want to have as many of those on your record as possible so that your weighted GPA gets as close to 5.0 as possible. And here's where students sometimes worry, well, my school doesn't have any honors classes or my school doesn't have any AP courses. So how can I possibly compete with other students at other schools who have that? And the truth is you don't need to worry. You are just competing against other students at your school. Whenever you apply to a top 20 school, the admissions committee member who's responsible for your district, they know your school and they have a sheet which gives them an explanation of what courses are available at your school and how difficult those courses are and what the top students from your school generally take. So they know how hard your school is and they know what's available. And the key here is that you want to be the top of your school. You want to be a standout student at your school. And the reason that this is so important for these universities is that first and foremost, they're institutions of higher learning. And they know that most students are just going there to get a degree, to get a good job. But that's not interesting to them. What they really want are students who are excited about learning for the sake of learning. Because that's what professors are, right? To a large degree. They're people who really love subjects for their own sake. They love physics for the beauty of it, not just so that you can get a physics degree and then go work on Wall Street for a hedge fund and make a lot of money. So you need to think about when you're applying to these schools that they really love learning for its own sake. And so you want to show that you're that same type of person. And that means you're hungry for advanced level knowledge. So when you're in high school, you're hungry to learn more than the average bear. You enroll in these AP courses because you want to be challenged, because they're exciting and they're interesting to you, and that you can handle that workload because that's the same type of workload that you're going to have in college. And another part of academic scholarship that's important is your SAT or ACT score. Now, I know most Ivy Leagues are test optional. When I'm making this video in February 2024, Dartmouth is the first school to actually go back to test required. So you will have to submit either your SAT or your ACT score. But even at the other Ivies, if they remain test optional, you have to remember that when you look at the metrics of students who are actually admitted into their freshman class, anywhere between 70 and 80% of admitted students submitted their scores. So while they gladly take applicants from anybody, right? That's, it's always good to have more applicants. It actually drives their acceptance rate down, which is nice for them. When you look at who actually gets into their school, predominantly it's students who submit their scores, right? 70 to 80%. So that means the best thing you can do if you want to get into an Ivy League or other top 20 school is take some test prep, really work for 6 months at boosting your math and verbal score and do as well as you possibly can. And generally speaking, you want to aim for around that 1550 range for the SAT and around a 35 or maybe 34 range for the ACT. But if you go to a school district that doesn't do very well and doesn't send a lot of students to top schools, then you can get away with having a lower score. Because again, Your standardized test score is not just measured nationally. It's going to be looked at against other students in your region. So if you end up with a 1450 and you think, oh, well, that's well below the 1550, average for the Ivy League. If you go to a school where, no one gets above a 1200, then you're golden. You want to submit that score. Don't just think automatically that it's because if your score is below the school's average that you don't submit it. You want to think about your score relative to the students around you, because that's who you will be measured against. And the final part of academic scholarship that's critical is your teacher recommendations. And here's where it's really important when you're a sophomore, when you're a junior, to start thinking about which of your teachers are going to provide your recommendations. And ideally, you want one of your teachers or both to say, this is one of those rare students that I only see once every 5, 10, 15 years. Their enthusiasm, their scholarship, their willingness to help other students, their hunger to go above and beyond the course curriculum and ask more questions and do additional work, that's what makes them exceptional. So those recommendations can really be key, because colleges have no idea exactly what you're going to be like when you get into their classes. So your teachers kind of give them the best insight of when this student gets to your class, he's going to be like this, this, and this. So you really want to kind of form friendships with your teachers, find teachers who not only get to see you in class, but maybe in clubs outside of class. So, it's not only your math teacher, but he's also the advisor to your robotics club. The more interaction that you have with these teachers, the better they can talk about you on different levels. The second thing you need to get into an Ivy League school is uncommon extracurricular achievement. And the emphasis here is on uncommon, because everyone who's applying to a top school is going to be involved doing some kind of extracurricular activities. They're going to be the student council president. They're going to be on the debate team. They're going to be vice president of the French club or the math club, whatever. Everyone is involved. The problem is that these schools get 50,000 applications roughly, and everyone is involved in their class. So what are you doing that makes you stand out from everybody else? That's the key. What differentiates you from everybody else? That's your ticket for getting in. Assuming you've got the academic scholarship that's required to compete at that level, now they're looking to say, okay, we've got 20,000 students who have kind of crossed that academic bar and are qualified to do well here. Now, which one of those stand out to us? And here's where what you do outside of class really works to your advantage. You need to find something that you not only enjoy, because it'll take a lot of your time, but you need to find something that you can excel at. And that takes a little bit of soul searching, because you might say, well, maybe I'll, play lacrosse and try to get really good at that. Or maybe I'll start a business, or maybe I'll start a nonprofit, or maybe I'll do Science Olympiad. Whatever you choose to do, it needs to be something you enjoy at least somewhat, because as I said, it's going to take a lot of your time. The only way to get good at anything is to devote yourself to it extensively. But it also has to be something that you're naturally good at. And it has to be something that you can excel at. Because you might say, well, I'm just going to become a great tennis player and that's going to help me get in. But there are a lot of limits that we all have about how good an athlete we can be. Like even if you work every single day after school for 5 hours, there's a limit to how good you're going to be. You have certain physical, genetic limits. And so you need to recognize what's something where I can achieve a level of uncommon expertise. What's something where I can truly have an impact. And if that is athletics for you, great. Go into it, become some kind of nationally ranked something where you can have an impact. But if that's not your thing, then you should do something that's more academic, something that's more in your control. If you're really good at art, you can say, all right, well, maybe I want to start teaching young kids how to do art. Okay, you can tutor kids in art. That's a good place to start. But there are so many people who do that. What is some uncommon level achievement? Oh, well, I'm going to start, submitting my paintings to certain galleries, or I'm going to try to get an internship working for this top painter. You need to get to a level where you've accomplished something that other students haven't. You were able to get some of your pieces in this really great competition. You were able to win some national awards. A few of your pieces got into this museum. Whatever it is, you need to think, that's my golden ticket. When I apply to these colleges, they're going to say, tell us about yourself. What's a good story? Your story is going to be how you've really achieved something remarkable in this one area. The third thing you can do to get into an Ivy League university is to apply early decision if it's available. So there are 8 Ivy League schools, and 3 of them no longer have early decision. That would be Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. A few years ago, they replaced it with something called single choice early action, which is a non-binding mechanism to apply early. The problem is that with those 3 schools, applying early doesn't give you any significant admissions advantage. But all the other schools, all the other 5 schools, that's UPenn, Columbia, Brown, Columbia, Dartmouth. Did I say that? Yeah. All the other 5 schools, they have early decision. And when you apply early decision to a school, you increase your admissions odds by about 3-fold or even 4-fold. So instead of having, for example, a 5% chance of getting in, you've now got a 20% chance of getting in. And that is a huge admissions advantage. If you know that that's your first choice school and you're okay signing a binding agreement and having your school sign a binding agreement that if you get accepted, you will enroll there, then you should absolutely consider applying early decision. Now, the only thing you should know about early decision is that the multiple advantage you get is probably not as strong as it looks on paper. There are other reasons why early decision candidates get in at a higher rate than regular applicants. Some of it has to do with the fact that a lot of recruited athletes apply early decision. Sons and daughters of faculty members apply early decision. And those students would get in anyway. They're not getting in because they applied early decision. They're getting in anyway. But still, when you still look at the math, you still have a huge advantage when you apply early decision. So you should just know that when you're doing it. The fourth thing you can do to get into an Ivy League university is to tailor your application specifically to that college. And this is where your supplemental essays come in. They ask you point blank, why do you want to go to this school? Or what do you want to study? Or what are your long-term goals? And you need to be able to draw a direct link between what you've accomplished in high school and what your goals are in the future with the specific courses, professors, and programs that that university has to offer. You can't just say, I want to go to UPenn because it's a really good school, it's highly rated, and it'll help me get a good job. You need to specify the things that you could only get at UPenn that you couldn't get at all the other schools. Because you don't want the admissions committee to look at your application and say, oh, this student is highly accomplished and they're very ambitious, but what they're looking to do in college is something they could do anywhere. Like they don't need to be specifically at UPenn to do what they want to do. So while we'd like to accept them, we only have limited number of spots. So we don't have a compelling reason why we have to accept this student, right? Versus looking at another application for another student who's, equally impressive academically, but they say, oh, I really want to go to UPenn because of these professors and these programs. Like Professor Smith, she specializes in blah, blah, blah. That's exactly the type of research that I want to do. It piggybacks on the research that I started in high school, and this will help me take it to the next level. Oh, that's pretty compelling. So we're the only school who has Professor X and her specialty. It makes sense why the student wants to study here. In addition, the student says, oh, I also am really interested in these programs you have. You have this particular consulting program where undergraduates are paired with students from some of the other undergraduate schools, and we're given funding and we help a nonprofit overseas. And so, that aligns with my long-term goals of going into management consulting or being a public servant, whatever it is. And suddenly the admissions committee says, not only is the student impressive academically, but in order to achieve his or her goals, they need to go here. Like they know exactly why they want to go here. And it has nothing to do with, oh, we're a prestigious school or, oh, they'll be able to get a good job afterwards. They know, they've done the research and they know that our school has these professors and these courses and these major, programs and these extracurricular activities, and they all align with the students' goals. So what you really want to do is kind of connect the dots and draw a direct line between where I've been and where I want to go, and UPenn is right in the middle. UPenn is the next logical step in my career progression. So in saying all of that, what you need to do is you need to make sure you tailor your application specifically to that school. And the more specific, the better. And the final thing you need to do to get into an Ivy League university is to have a great personal statement. Your personal statement is your main essay. It's basically your introduction. This is who I am. And it needs to be compelling, and it needs to be authentic, and it needs to make you stand out. Because again, these schools are evaluating so many highly qualified applicants. On paper, they have far more applicants who are qualified than they can possibly accept, right? So they have so many good students that they're left to say, okay, which of these students are we really excited about? Like, who do we want to have in our classroom? Which one of these students do we want to have in our dorm room or leading some of our, club activities? So in your personal statement, you need to just tell a story about yourself that reveals something interesting about you. And some of the best personal statements are just that. They're a story from your past. This is a story about when I went to visit my grandparents on a farm, or this is a story about when I went overseas and I learned something I didn't expect to learn. Or this is a story about how I really struggled in freshman year with math, but how I kind of taught myself to think about homework differently and how it became my favorite subject. If you think about, I need it to be big and grand, like you're going to get lost. Most students do well by picking something really small and specific, like one story or one event, one moment in time that kind of had a profound impact on them. And so you don't need to be the most interesting person in the world. You don't need to have, traveled the world or saved the children or done anything heroic because most students haven't by that age. Instead, pick something small that can reveal important things about you. So they're reading this small story about you that reveals a lot of details and gives them insight into who you are and what your values are and what your thought process is. In the end, a good personal statement is one that makes the admissions committee say, we really like this person. We want to root for this person to succeed. This is a person who's got a great attitude, who's got a great learning ability. They've got maybe a thirst for knowledge, and they're not afraid to make mistakes to learn and grow, because that's what they're going to do in college, right? We want students who are going to come here and explore and try new things and just have a great mindset and a great attitude, and are going to attack the challenges they face with resilience and enthusiasm and a collaborative nature. So when you write your personal statement, you want to think about, what version of myself do I want to present to this college? I want to be authentic. I want it to be an authentic version of myself, but it doesn't have to be the version of me who who procrastinates all the time, or who gets depressed, or who gets bitter. You want to focus on the version of yourself that's like the superhero version of yourself, the version of yourself who's compassionate and motivated and hungry for knowledge and feels like you can take on the world.